Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Thriving Adoptees podcast. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Nicolle Tremitiere. Looking forward to our second conversation. It's only like 4 months into the last one, so it's a treat. It's a treat to speak to you.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. So, if people want to check out Nicolle's first interview, there's links to that in the show notes. Last time we dived into kind of a lot of EMDR stuff and flash EMDR, and the kind of pre-verbal trauma. Why EMDR is great for looking at healing pre-verbal trauma. So today we're going to start by looking at perhaps some of your personal healing moments. So what is there? Are there a few that comes to mind, or is there?
Yeah, there are a few. I didn't start any kind of therapy until I was like 27. And that was as a result of me having a learning disability, and they offer that as part of it. And I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. And so I learned a lot about myself in that process, but I wouldn't say that there was much healing there. There was healing there. There's more like education, awareness. Oh, that's why I do that. And then the first time I went back to that same therapist, actually, because I knew she did EMDR. This is a weird thing. I don't know if it's it was a medical issue, but I got my thyroid taken out because I had thyroid cancer, and I was in grad school, and I started having panic attacks. And I know now that, sometimes when people go through an existential crisis, like I didn't have this plan for my life, sometimes they can kind of have some psychological impact. And so I didn't really know where that was coming from, but she helped me get rid of the panic attacks. And it was really interesting what it tied into. And it tied into a strange relationship that I had with someone. I don't even want to mention how this person was part of my life, but a strange relationship where this person did some things that were inappropriate. But I mean, it wasn't like sexual assault, but did some things that were inappropriate, and it changed the dynamic of our relationship. And I got really afraid of that. And I really think that has to do with relational trauma and my fear of being rejected, or if I don't do this, is the relationship going to end? We had a good friendship, but I started to learn that relationship was not healthy, and that the person, I don't know if it overtly manipulated me, but I really thought highly of this person. And I realized that the relationship was going to change, and I couldn't handle it. So that was the first time I did EMDR. And then when you are an EMDR clinician, you go through, you practice EMDR on each other during the training. And I wanted to work on like some of the adoption stuff. And I said, I don't really have a lot of memory about anything, but maybe we can just start somewhere. And I remember the person who did that. I envisioned a time where I was little. I don't have memory of this, but I was thinking in my mind that I was in this room, and my birth mother was friends with one of the people that worked there. And then she said, do you want to see her one last time? And then she opened the door and looked at me. And my memory or thought was, I started to go towards her, and then she slammed the door. And I fell to the ground, and I just like was inconsolable. And I stopped, and I was like, that's strange. And I asked the trainer, I said, did this really happen? She's like, I don't know. It really doesn't matter. Your body believes that it happened, right? And so I was just like kind of fascinated with the idea of that. And I really felt sorry for the little tiny kid that experienced that. The first time I was really able to say, wow, like she was inconsolable, right? And so I think it's often for me when I am upset, I don't want anyone to touch me. I push them away. I have to like go by myself and just kind of gather my thoughts. And that, I think that's a maladaptive coping mechanisms. I don't, I won't be open to co-regulation with anybody when I'm that upset. So that was interesting. Let me see what else. I did some EMDR with.
Can I
Oh,
stop
okay.
you there? Can I stop you
Yes.
there? Because there's a few things I could dive into from that.
Okay.
Right back to the start.
Mm-hmm.
Talked about the thyroid cancer.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry that you had to go through that. Right, it's been a tricky time for you. And what came to my mind is the brain chemistry and the hormones
Yes.
going around, right? When you've got this thyroid stuff going on for you. So
Mm-hmm.
these two things, does that change lead to the crisis kind of stuff? Is that?
I don't know if it was the thyroid itself, but what happened was when I got my thyroid out, I felt suddenly awake, like, oh my gosh, this is what I was really feeling lethargic before, and I was really super awake. I'm like, this is great, except I couldn't go to sleep. So I don't know what that's about. I don't know. I mean, I tried to get a medical answer. No one could give me a medical answer, and I struggled with insomnia for 2 years. So I don't know exactly what triggered that, if it was psychological or medical, and it doesn't really matter. The way that I would heal it is the same way, or address it is the same way I would tell any client. And I wasn't a therapist at the time. Um, but now I know that, I have a lot of stuff going in my mind all of the time. Um, I don't know what I was thinking about specifically, but I think I was stressed because during that time, I was also fighting for my daughter to get appropriate education because she had dyslexia and she wasn't writing paragraphs, sentences. And she was in 6th grade and she had a reading level of a pre-kindergarten. And so I was fighting like legal battles for that. So I think that might have contributed to it, you
Yeah.
know. So I don't know
Yeah.
for sure, but
So the next thing that came to me as you were talking was about this fear of being rejected, which
right. Mm-hmm.
seems to be one of the uh, top 5 things or bottom 5 things, depending on how look at
Mm-hmm.
it. It's one of the key.
Yeah.
It's one of the key things here. So, what's your take on that? What's your take on that?
I think that most adoptees, if not all, and I don't want to say, oh no, most adoptees probably have a fear of rejection or abandonment. And we don't get to choose what that looks like. And sometimes we don't really realize what it is until it happens and we have language for it. So I think I was really becoming aware at that time of this fear of abandonment and that it's a real thing. And I couldn't explain where it came from because if you ask my mother at the time, we have a family. She did all the things, tucked us in our bed almost every single night, all the way through high school. When she was home, she, I don't know, you would think that maybe that would solve it, but it doesn't, and it's beyond the adoptive parent to heal this. It's so ingrained in our memory system that we don't even have language for it until we get older. But now that we do, I mean, having a podcast like this can bring awareness to adoptees. It's like you can be the most adjusted person in the world and still have this piece of unstable sense of self that you're not going to be able to handle it if somebody leaves or if the relationship does not work out. Um, and I think that as I get older, um, you know, and working through a lot of the stuff like unhealthy relationships. Um, I really think that at 54, I have a better understanding of what I will and what I will not put up with as a woman who's single. I am single right now, been single for a long time. It would take a special person to get me to entertain, the idea of being in a partnership with them, because they're going to have their stuff together emotionally, physically. I mean, not physically, like I'm not a couple of pounds, but and financially, like I want to know what your problem solving skills are. I want to know how you act when you get in a tough situation. I want to see how you handle anger. I am definitely just, I don't want someone that's clingy. I want them to feel secure in who they are. So I think age changes, the concept of relationship, knowing that every relationship is not going to always work out, and that's okay. It doesn't necessarily have to be a crisis.
Yeah.
So,
And this example that came out in therapy, the door, your birth mother slamming the door in your
yeah.
face? Do you think that and the rejection thing kind of sit together?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Definitely. I was becoming more aware of what this thing was, that I didn't know what it was, but I felt several times before that. But it just culminated, during that situation. Um, yeah, I think that they're all tied together. It happens even with friendships. It doesn't have to be a romantic relationship. I mean, if I have friendships that have dissolved or maybe ended abruptly, and I remember feeling that same sense of anxiety or dread, and I couldn't put my finger on it, but through therapy, I'm learning about these things. I feel like I wouldn't say that I'm healed from it exactly. I know that I'm on the right path. I can say that.
Yeah. So you talked about the change after therapy and
Hmm.
the removal of the thyroid, becoming
Hmm.
more aware. And on one part of that, you were talking, this is a good thing. I've become aware of this stuff. But on the other hand, it led to this kind of insomnia, as you say. So
Yeah.
and perhaps did it tweak your hypervigilance and
Yeah, I do think that, the combination of removing my disease, the thyroid, that was making me lethargic and like not really sharp, along with all the sudden feeling awake and the mind racing, because I have ADHD, but it was like on high alert. I would almost say, if somebody was telling me this and it wasn't me, I would almost say it almost seemed like a manic thing, but not my behavior, but my brain. Right. It was on all the time. Um, I was aware of it. I didn't feel comfortable with it. A lot of times when people have bipolar and they're in a manic state or a hypomanic state, they feel good. I did not feel good. Right. So I can only liken it to that, that I was very awake and I was exhausted at the same time as the months went on.
wow,
Yeah.
wow.
I
Um,
tried to get someone to help me. Oh, we're going to help you. And then they don't help you. The irritability that comes with insomnia is for real. I
yeah.
warned people though. I said, please, please, I'm sorry ahead of time. I'm
Yeah.
so irritated right now. Yeah.
You draw a distinction between kind of learning and healing.
Yes. I
And
think learning is so important. I mean, psychoeducation, understanding, what it is a therapist is introducing to a client, even if it sounds crazy. And I say that because if you tell someone, I'm going to wave my finger in front of your face, like they're going to be, what? You know what I mean? So the education piece is so important. So we can normalize the language, and for them to get comfortable with the mechanics of it, and to encourage them to just notice what comes up, you know. it's fascinating because some people have, like, they experience it very visually, and I'm jealous of those people. Mine is kind of grainy, but it's there, but it's mostly thoughts. Like I'm having a conversation with myself. And so a lot of times when we do EMDR, somebody will come up with a question, and it could be rhetorical, but it's usually not. Well, I don't know what I'm going to do if I can't be with so and so. And then I said, just go with that. So we do another set of bilateral stimulation. And then when I say, what did you notice that time? I'm just going to be fine. Like, he's not everything. You know what I mean? Like, you answer your own question. It's so interesting. And I think what's interesting too is that it won't change. Like, if you have a strong faith, like let's say a Christian faith, some of the things that you come up with are related to your faith. It goes with whatever it is that is in your mind, in your beliefs. It won't contradict your beliefs, but it'll help support them too
Yeah.
in the healing process.
So you talked about answering our own questions,
Mhm.
and most people not expecting that. They're expecting the questions to be answered for them, are they?
In therapy, no. I mean, and that's something that we have to do as far as setting the right expectations. My my job is not to answer questions for you. If I did that, it would interfere with your own journey, and that would be a tragedy, right? So, um, I might ask a clarifying question, or did you mean this, or did you mean that? But in EMDR, there's really not supposed to be a whole lot of talking unless it's for clarification or saying, well, just go with that. It's a really true form of therapy, the way that it's intended, with active listening. And then because like everything that you have, everything that you need in your life is already up here. Like we already know it, but it might be disorganized, right? So I think EMDR helps to organize the stuff that we already know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like we both know if we were going to experience a relationship that ended abruptly, intellectually, we know we're not going to die. Like we will get past it. We've gotten past everything that we've ever experienced in our life thus far, right? So, but it's just because you're hyper vigilant, you're not thinking straight. And that's why like the grounding techniques and all the prep work that we do for EMDR is really important, because they can self-soothe in between appointments, hopefully. Um, but yeah.
People seem to, I love this distinction between, I love this word psychoeducation,
Hmm.
because it seems to me that that's what the world is about.
There is a lot of
Books
psychoeducation out there.
books are about psychoeducation,
Yeah.
and you make a very big, an understanding isn't enough. And I think this really, why this lands for me is because I get very frustrated at the psychoeducation.
Hmm.
Like reading books, like Oprah's book with Bruce Perry, right? He's the guru guy. He's the trauma. He's one of the top trauma gurus. Him and Bessel van der Kolk and all these sorts of guys. And yeah, the books are purely psychoeducation. They're not about healing. Nobody dives into healing. Well, I would say nobody dives into healing as much as we do on this podcast, right?
Yeah,
Most
I think
adoptee
so.
most adoptee podcasts are about stories. They're not about healing. And I'm getting goosebumps about that, because that's what we're trying to do here.
Right.
Is we're trying to, listeners, you're listening to this, right? But we're going to the heart of healing. This isn't the same. Listening to our previous conversation this morning, Nicolle, I
Okay.
said, listening to a podcast isn't the same as having a therapy session, right?
Correct.
This isn't the same. But what we're doing is we're drawing some distinctions, and simply by focusing on healing, rather than the trauma, simply focusing on healing rather than the story, then
Yeah.
we're doing that in the hope that that may create some kind of healing insights and shifts. And we got into this, we talked about this quite a lot last time. It's about being it's being about being less triggered less often.
Yes.
It's about being triggered less often. And
It's not going to happen in a vacuum. You know, if you are adopted, whether or not you had loving parents or not, if you experience any kind of negative reaction that seems to last longer than most people, when you have a breakup or like a friend breakup or something like that, or you get ghosted and you decompensate, like this is all of that stuff, right? And you wouldn't think of that. You wouldn't think it's from, the maternal separation or whatever, birth mom was going through while you were in utero. Um, but if you can't shake it and you really want to do a deep dive into personal healing, then you have to find a therapist that is very well versed in attachment, and can help you identify and strengthen some attachment figures that you feel like, even if the person is not like accessible to you, but you saw a movie that this person was like, oh, the most nurturing mother you ever felt. She wasn't too much. She was really letting you experience life and have challenges, and then talks you through that. And you know so we need to identify attachment figures that we feel safe with, because it's really about emotional safety,
yeah,
right? So for those who may be interested, if you go on emdria.org, emdria.org, those are a list of international attachment, excuse me, EMDR therapists. Some of them are certified, some of them are consultants in training, some of them are presenters. Um, like I would find, if you kind of do a drill down on that, look for someone that has attachment as one of the things that they work with, you know, and that might be a place to start.
yeah. So another way of looking, so that there's a link in the show notes. We're going to put a link in the show notes to that, listeners. So it's
Okay.
EMDIRA, yeah.
EMDRIA.
DRIA.
So that's the International Association for EMDR
Yeah.
and EMDR therapists. So
I love that distinction that you make between getting something rationally.
mm-hmm.
Right? So you say, we know that we know that this isn't going to lead to us. This isn't going to kill us. Whatever this loss is,
Yeah.
it's not going to kill us.
Right.
But and yet there's this catastrophizing.
Yes.
There's this catastrophizing. So there's the difference between getting something logically and getting something what would you say?
Um,
What's the opposite of that? Well, not the, what's the deeper? Not logically, not
I would
intellectually.
say physiologically, because if we look at, or biologically, because if we're looking at the way the brain is wired and how the body responds, that is the truth. That is where we want to know if you're really okay. And I'm not saying that everyone's not functioning. Yeah, some people are functioning. They happen to be in a relationship with a secure person. They might not have a need for this. But if you're in a relationship with someone who is avoidant, right? Um, that's going to drive a person that doesn't have healed attachment stuff. Like if they're not healed, that's going to really
Yeah.
take them for a loop. So,
So can I? So
mhm.
getting it physiologically is what you mean by that. We don't get that um, visceral response that we might used to get. So I can think of I think of a gut reaction,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel it.
Mm-hmm.
I can think of threats, right? Me perceiving a threat of
Mm-hmm.
somebody pulling away,
Mm-hmm.
or somebody not doing what they say they're going to do, or something like that. And I feel that in
Mm-hmm.
the pit of my stomach, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, is what you're saying, getting it physiologically, is that when the symptoms, the physical symptoms, are
I would
less
say
than
so.
the
For some people, when they experience something like somatically, physiologically, like let's say, for instance, they feel anxiety. When someone feels anxiety, how does that manifest? Well, some people might actually vomit. Some people actually might have diarrhea. Um, um, some people might completely shut down and isolate. So
yeah.
yeah, it can
It's
manifest that way.
so it's a change in our own physical response. So
Correct.
when it's happened before, and when it happens again, and the physical response is totally not there, or it's a less extreme. Because I was thinking, your results, the examples that you gave were quite extreme, and I'm just thinking about a feeling in the pit of my stomach. So it's basically a healing could be looked at as a kind of a de-escalation or a reduced physical response for
Yes.
whatever that means, and we've all
Yeah.
got a
Because
different.
sure, it's sad, it's upsetting. We might cry for a day, but what happens after that? That you say, what just didn't work out, I'm gonna take some time to, take care of myself and then, you know, do what you have to do. That's a very adaptive response to um a bad breakup or something like that. If you're ruminating and cyber stalking and trying to show up and beg them, just give me more. That's there's something there that's like, and it's weird because they can't stop themselves from doing it, even though if it happened to them, they would be totally turned off by it.
Yeah, I,
You know,
I can think of a certain girl that I did that with. Yeah, for sure.
yeah,
For
and we've all done it. I won't do it again. I can tell you that. you
sure.
know, it's just like I only have I'm on the second half of my life here. I don't have time for that. So part of that is age and some therapy, and I'm not done because I really, even if I have the best years of my life for 5 years, I still am going to do the work. To make sure that I'm as healthy as I can for whoever I come in contact
Yeah.
with.
So you talked a couple of minutes ago about withdrawal, and you talked probably 10 minutes or so ago about being inconsolable when we're
Hmm.
screaming. And that really rang some bells for me. Like I don't almost as I'm thinking about certain instances where my response to people trying to console me has to be actually to push them away.
I mean, if you grew up in I was just looking over the some of my CEUs, and I took this training, and it was EMDR training, but it was talking about pathological bonding, and
That doesn't
and
sound good.
no, but I think we do that a lot. I mean, I think we do it um like depending on how we were raised, and it has to do with like when kids are being raised by their parents. There should be a combination of co-regulation and auto-regulation. But if a child is being neglected and they have to regulate themselves, they have to self-soothe themselves, so sometimes they cry and go to sleep. Sometimes they'll hide, or they'll have anxiety, to make sure I don't want to get in trouble again, so let me make sure that I'm doing X, Y, and Z. So when there is not appropriate parental like attachment stuff going on, there is going to be this tendency to auto regulate, or you feel like you can't regulate unless you're with somebody. So there are two ends of the spectrum, and and those are not healthy. And so I think it manifests in not allowing people to console you when you're upset. You go off by yourself. You have to regulate yourself. But the idea of being able to co-regulate is something that I think will come later for some people if they get the appropriate help. Because this is, I mean, all that the anxiety or the avoidance is fight or flight 101, you know. And the window of tolerance, you know, is like right here. And I know people can't see what I'm seeing, but you know, when we go to therapy, we want to open that window of tolerance so you can handle more. Because if you go up here, then you're out of your window of tolerance. If you go all the way down here, whether it's to isolate or dissociate, that is the opposite end of the spectrum, and that's not adaptive. So therapy will help you open the window of tolerance and allow you to handle more. But we have to desensitize all the things that are creating that hypervigilance or that fear that if you don't de-escalate, you know, go all the way down there to avoid that, you're not going to be okay.
Yeah. So we talked about that big change that happened for you after realizing, after that event, the door slamming, the memory of the door slamming. What changed for you after that event?
Well, I think that started some inner child work, you know, to really, you know, to take notice of the little girl that didn't have the tools to manage and to have compassion for her, you know, visualizing her and saying, do you want to help her or do you want to leave her there? And of course, I want to help her, you know. And it's really interesting because, um, you know, looking at my granddaughter, she's not me, you know, but she is like she causes this feeling of love similar to the little girl that I'm trying to rescue, you know. And and this little girl is being attended to. You know, she gets in trouble when she's supposed to get in trouble, but she's constantly just like loving on me, her mom, her grandfather, and she really feels connected to us. And I think that having secure connections when you're that little is super, super important. I apparently did not have secure connections. And you know, back in the early 70s, I mean, there's only so much that my adopted mom could have known or whatever. And I'm sure she did the best that she could, but there was 15 kids. You can't really attend to all the needs of 15 kids. It's just not physically possible.
No.
But
Wow.
yeah. Yeah.
15 kids. Wow.
Yeah.
So do I have any other particular healing moments come to mind, Nicolle?
Trying to think. Um yes, yes. Um I well, I might take that back because I don't know if that's exactly answering your question. I think for me, knowing what I learned in that when we're in that training, and then taking that information to the therapist that I was working with at the time, and just working through some of the relationships that I had that were kind of like uh, not healthy, and you know, I needed to step away from them or not be in them anymore. And I'm not just talking about like I'm talking about friendships too. Um, I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to think.
So it's a surfacing and then a dealing.
No, I realized that I definitely set as more boundaries than I ever did in this last decade. And I realized that setting boundaries is not about not liking the person, but it's because you do value the relationship, but you don't want a relationship that is makes you feel icky. you know, or that you feel like you're being taken advantage of. So, or you feel like the person's going to leave if you don't help them with whatever. So in that way, yes, I mean, my everyday relationships I feel are healthier because of what I've learned in the therapy that I've been involved in.
Yeah.
Yep. And I have closer relationships. I spend my time with people who are like-minded, who have gone through therapy. Like I have a really close relationship with my brother Steve, who has experienced EMDR, is constantly trying to better himself and his family through therapy. And we trust each other. And it's a beautiful relationship. All of my siblings can't do that. And I still love them. I just don't have that kind of relationship with them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you think gets in the way of our healing?
Hubris and
Hubris. What's I've heard that
ego,
word. Ego.
like really thinking, like your ego, like thinking that that they have it all, that they can handle whatever. And I see the dysfunction, and and so some of my family probably think I'm very standoffish or inaccessible because my experience with relationships with them, you know, I don't feel like my spirit says no. You know, you love from a distance. I love you, but I'm not going to come to your house and things like that. But and I love my family dearly, but again, I will not allow myself to be in relationships that are not healthy, or if you don't reach out, I'm going to match the energy type of thing. I don't want to invest in someone. I used to over invest in people that I considered friends or colleagues or whatever, and if I didn't get that same investment back, I just kept on investing in them. And I'm not going to do that anymore. It's not healthy for me. So I'm just trying to find like-minded people that I feel comfortable with, that doesn't cause my internal fear thing to pop off. And I'm just more particular about who I spend time with, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned our so there's a gauging going on. There's
Yeah.
a gauging for where.
Are you a safe person or are you not a safe person?
Yeah.
You know?
There's a gauging, and but it's not 3.2 versus 4.6.
Right.
It's more of an intuitive kind of gut
Yeah.
gauging.
The way our body reacts to somebody tells you everything. You might not have the specifics of why, but it might slow you down a little bit to let me wait to see how this person is, or, you know, over time, and not to jump right in like, yeah, let's go the trip, let's go to Maui to get, no, no, no. I'm not going on vacation with anybody that my internal clock says, no, no. Yeah.
Yeah. An idea, a memory popped into my head, and it's a business one actually. It's
Okay.
I had an instant dislike of a guy, and then that I was interviewing, who came for an interview. As soon as he arrived, I had an instant dislike to him, but
Mm-hmm.
he was a good talker,
Mm-hmm.
and I ended up taking him on as
Mm-hmm.
a member of staff, and it went terribly. It went terribly when I overrode my instinct.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, what does that look like in a kind of client therapist sense for you?
Well, whenever someone comes to therapy, we have to both feel like it's a good fit, right? Because some people are open to ideas, some people are not. They'll come in and they want to, you know, um, be in charge of their therapy, right? And not in a way that is healthy, but in a way that, you know, they want you to do this, they want you to do that. If they show up late, they want you to continue to give them the whole hour when you have somebody next, and there's certain people that just aren't good fits. For me, now there's someone out there's a therapist out there for almost everybody, and just because they're not a good fit for me doesn't mean they're not going to be a good fit for somebody else. There's certain personalities that my alarm clocks just say no. They just say no. And I usually can figure out within 3 sessions. And either they'll leave therapy, or I'm going to say, I don't know if this is the right fit for you, because a lot of times when people want to do EMDR, they think that the day that you come in, you're going to do EMDR. And for some people, they're willing to do that, and that's okay, right? But for me, and because I don't hundreds, maybe even 1,000 EMDR clients, there's a lot of prep work, especially for people with complex trauma. I am not going to do EMDR if I don't feel comfortable that you have enough resources to be stable in between appointments. So if someone's really pushy that way, we're not a good fit.
Yeah. So what could you share with clients out there, listeners out there who are adoptees, that could help them and give themselves a better self of sorry, I'm struggling for the word here.
Like what could happen?
No.
Like how that's introduced?
Okay. What I'm getting at, right, is that you said hubris and ego. I said, what stops us healing? And you said hubris and ego. Okay. So now I'm sure those people who have hubris and ego going on, when they go to a therapist or whatever, I'm sure they don't realize. I'm sure that they don't realize it. They think that they're being open, and they think that they think that they're being open when they're not being open. So I'm wondering what kind of self-awareness, what you can share about self-awareness for adoptees in general and in therapy. That's a
yeah.
Go where you like.
I would say that if you are, if your mindset is like, I want to get better now, like that might be an expectation that's not going to be able to be met, especially with a more seasoned EMDR clinician, because there's just not the desensitization part of it. It might be like taking information, like they would have to have some patience, and if someone's been doing this for a while, we know what we're doing. We want to do a thorough examination, just like if you're going to the doctor. Oh, doctor, I have this pain. Okay, we'll get on the table. Let me listen to your heart. Let me look down your throat. Let's get some blood work. Oh, by the way, yeah, it looks like you have a hernia. Now, if someone comes in, feels your stomach, says, okay, let's just cut it open. Like, I would be like, wait a minute. You know what I mean? Like, hold on. Like, you don't have enough information. But I think that we just need to give ourselves permission to, to do the research. They could research themselves. Like if someone goes to my website, which I can't give it to you right now because it's under construction, but if someone went to my website and they truly read what's on my website, they would have an understanding that this isn't going to happen on day one. Like, I really need to gather some information. I want to know what kind of resources you have. If you've had EMDR in the past and it was more than like 5 sessions or whatever, that's helpful for me to know. How did you handle that? Oh, I did some crying or whatever, but I was able to get myself together. Okay, well, that's good. That's good for me to know. But just to understand that, we want to really make sure that you're the right candidate for this. And it might take some time before we get to the point when we can do EMDR. But again, I'm so grateful that I have Flash EMDR, because if a person, comes in and they're really keyed up about something, we could probably do something that day but that's not everybody. It really depends on the situation and depends on, you know, the goals we have set out for that person, but just kind of like, you know, educate yourself first, and then, ask the questions in the first session and be open to whatever the therapist says. And you can decide whether or not you want to continue, because we're not in the business of wanting to harm our
Yeah.
clients, you know. So
So if we're being impatient, then we're probably barking up the wrong tree. And
yeah.
and I'm thinking back. I'm thinking back to myself in situations like this. Because
Hmm.
I have, had first conversations with a couple of therapists over the last month or so. Um, and what I found myself doing was having, well, I didn't waffle on too long, right? I, I felt, okay, so I need to give them a little bit. When I got in touch with them, I gave them a little bit of background, like, I don't know, five, six, half the page, maybe half a page of A4, maybe a little less, maybe a third of a page of A4. So this is my journey. This is what I've done in the past. This is what I'm looking to do.
Hmm.
And then I answered a couple of questions, but I didn't talk at the potential therapist
Hmm.
for the hour. Like I said, okay, so I've shared a little bit about me. You've asked me a few questions. What else do you need to know, and tell me about your stuff? So I was conscious of the fact that I sometimes overtalk,
Hmm.
go on too long. So I try to kind of rein that in. So that shows to me a little bit of self awareness,
Hmm.
and I made it clear that where I'm coming from. So it's it's a gentle information exchange, really, in those first stages, isn't it? And it's got to
Why did you
have a
choose that
balance.
therapist?
Sorry.
Why did you choose that therapist?
Well, I was looking for. So last time we spoke,
Hmm.
the the after since then the therapist
Hmm.
decided to retire. So
Okay.
I needed I needed. That's a good question. Did I need one? Right. I felt that I wanted to continue learning because I'm like
Okay.
you. I want to keep on learning. Right.
Okay.
Um, and so I did some, and I had a sense that I wanted it to be local. I wanted to do it face to
Hmm.
face. So that helped me understand. I knew that I was looking for something with a somatic bias to it.
Hmm.
Um, and so I spoke to one lady who was into what she called somatic EMDR.
Hmm.
She was a good fit. And then towards the end, I said, well, what would you advise me to do? Or what else could I do? And she said, well, you might look at something that is more pure play, pure somatic, and
Mm.
that's MDR-ish stuff. And I thought, okay. I thought, good on her, for me to explain it. And so I found somebody locally, and I decided that for where, in terms of where I'm at,
Hmm.
I thought something a little bit more somatic might help. And she did
Yeah.
some stuff with me on that first session. So I decided to go with her, but it was pretty close. And if it
Yeah.
doesn't work out with the second lady, then I'll go back to the start. But it's I guess it's about balance, and it's kind of hard to. Oh, right.
Right.
So our advice is make sure that you've got a balance of who's doing the talking. But
Yeah.
I don't. What would
Well, I
you?
mean, if the therapist is doing talking, it should be for understanding. Sometimes clients want to know more details, and it depends on what it is that I would share with them. But but primarily it's really about holding space for them. And with somatic work, at least from my understanding, because my one friend is certified, a certified somatic practitioner. There's really not a lot of talking other than them saying, notice that, be curious about that. And there is some feedback, but I think it's really important that whatever modality you think you want to do, to really look to see what that might look like. It would be helpful, because even though I do EMDR, I am very intrigued by the somatic, but it costs so much to become trained and effective. Like, we have to pick one or the other. Some people can pick all of them. That's great, but a lot of us don't have the funds to like really dive deep into all of the bottom up therapies, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've covered quite a bit. Is there anything else that you'd like to share, Nicolle?
No, I mean, I really think that, be your best advocate, find out if a certain therapy modality is for you. If you have any fears, can a therapist address those fears or concerns? And just to really kind of shop around, you know. I don't get offended if I'm not for somebody, and with the attachment stuff, that's when I know, like, okay, that's fine. You know what I mean? It's really fascinating to work with people who know exactly what they want and have done their own research, right? So just be an educated consumer.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Thanks, Nicolle. Thanks,
You're
listeners.
welcome.
We'll speak to you very soon. Take care.
All
Bye-bye.
right. Thank you.